In this video, we're going to be looking at two-dimensional arrays. We're going to look at how we create them, how we read them, and how we interrogate them. So just to give you a quick recap on what arrays are, and there's more detail in my previous video, an array is a type of data structure and it holds multiple values of the same data type under one name. So here's just an example of an array of players, and we've got Norbert, Daniil, Shakira, and Enitan. So those are four names or four values that are all of the same data type and they're held under one name. And it's essentially just a list. An array is just a list. So if we break that down, we've got this is the name where we are storing the list or the data structure. We have an assignment operator where we assign these values to the name. And then we're using square brackets. Always notice that we use square brackets when we're writing our lists, and we separate each item with a comma. And finally, these items are all of the same data type. They're all strings. They're all strings, so they must be of the same data type. Now, when we're indexing arrays, I've just added these numbers to the top here that wouldn't actually show up in your program, but it's important to know that our list starts at 0. The first position is 0, also known as index or referred to as I. So if I was to print players 2, Shakira would be displayed because I'm just printing, I'm going to players and I'm looking at what's at the second index there, and that would be Shakira. So our list actually has 4 elements or values or data items. So these could all be referred to as either elements, values, or items of data. And so even though we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, that actually counts as 4 actual items of data within our single dimensional array. Now, moving on to two-dimensional arrays, which are essentially lists inside a list. So a two-dimensional array is a list inside a list. And two-dimensional arrays can often be looked at as a table. So a two-dimensional array is like a table. Now, I'm just adding our player names here to help with the scenario. So imagine we've got Norbert, Daniil, Shakira, and Enitan, and they've sat 2 tests. Now, in the first test, in test 1, Norbert got 12, Daniil got 23, and Shakira got 18, and Enitan got 15. And in test 2, Norbert got 18, Daniil got 15, Shakira got 13, and Enitan got 16. Now, I would want to store those results in a table. I would want to store those results in a table. And that table might look like an array within an array. So if you take a look, I've got marks in the test, I've got the marks in the test, and I've got the players, because Norbert is in position 0. See, Norbert is in position 0, and he scored 12 and 18. He scored 12 and 18 in test 1 and 2, and test 1 and 2. So this is an array. It's a table, or it's a list within a list. So we've got a list for test 1, and then I've got a list for just Norbert's results. I've got a list for test 1, and I've got a list for Daniil's result. I've got a list for test 1 and 2, and I've got a list just for Shakira's results. So it's a list within a list. Now, we're going to look at how we read two-dimensional arrays. So my array is called results. My two-dimensional array is called results, okay? My table is called results. Now, the first thing I read are the rows. The first thing I read are the rows. These can also be called records, if you remember that, because this is a record of Norbert's results. It's a record of what Norbert got in test 1 and test 2. It's a record of what Enitan got in test 1 and test 2. So these are rows, and I read the row first. I read the row first, okay? I then read the column. I read the column. So test 1, I read the column. So if we take a look at, I'm just removing Norbert, Daniil, and Shakira and Enitan's name and test 1 and test 2 because these actually aren't in our arrays right now. All we've got is their test results because our array is called results. And if I take a look at print result 2, 1, print result 2, 1, and notice I've got my square brackets there because I'm talking about array. I'm going to read the row first. I'm going to read the row first. So 2 refers to 0, 1, 2. That's my row first. And then 1. So I'm going to go 0 and 1. So I read my row first. I then read my column. And I'm actually going to be printing out 13. I'm going to print out 13. So I'm getting the result from test 2. The result from test 2. And I believe that was Shakira's result. Yep, that's Shakira's result in test 2. So if I wanted to find out Shakira's result in test 2, I'd go results. So that's the name of my two-dimensional array. Then I need to pick the row first, which is 2, and then I need to pick the column, and that gives me 13. Now, in order to declare or create, when I'm declaring a variable, I'm creating a variable, and I need to declare a two-dimensional list. So I'm creating a two-dimensional list. Here I've got my two lists. Here I've got my two lists, and I want to create a list within a list. So I need to actually combine this information. So how do I do that? Well, what we can take a look at here is I've got results, and results is going to equal 12, 18, 20, 15, 18, 13, 15, 16. And if you can see what I've done here is I've actually got a table, and I've created a list. See these square brackets? I've created a list within a list. I've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4 lists within a list. I've got 4 lists within results. I've got a two-dimensional array. I've got a two-dimensional array, which can also be looked at as a table. And if you remember, these were Norbert's results. This is Daniil's results. This is Shakira's results. This is Enitan's result. This test is out of 20, so they're all doing very well. Okay, so if I look at this, I'm going to now focus in on the details because I know I've got a lot going on the screen, but this is what's important. This is my two-dimensional array. So I've got the results in test 1 and test 2, and these are the results of Norbert. So you see test 1, test 2, and Norbert's results are test 1, test 2. And if I look at my actual table, 0, which is Norbert, and that's the results of test 1 and test 2. So when I declare a two-dimensional array, I'm putting a list within a list. I'm putting a list within a list. That can often be looked at as a table as well. And we need to remember our indexes start at 0. Now, when I'm interrogating a two-dimensional array, that's when I'm asking my two-dimensional array a question, when I'm trying to get information from my two-dimensional array. So here's my two-dimensional array called results. And remember that these are Norbert's results, these are Daniil's results, this is Shakira's results, and this is Enitan's results, okay? Now, I'm just going to put my table here just to help you visualize, how these results are stored. And remember my columns are test 1 and test 2, and my rows, my records, are the names of my players. So if I asked to just print the result, what do you think would happen? I've just got results. I haven't got any square brackets. I haven't got any indexes. Well, it's going to print the whole table. It's going to print the whole two-dimensional array. It's going to print everything inside results. Now, if I want to print results 0, so I've just got a 0 there. Well, we need to remember that what we do when we are reading our array, we read our rows first. So if I take a look, this is my row. So if I'm printing 0, then I'm reading the row first, and that's going to print Norbert's results. It's just going to print this because that is my first row. The first list within my list is my first row. So I'm going to print 12 and 18. And finally, if I print results 0, 1, well, I'm going to read my first row. Because that's 0, yeah? I read my row first. And then I'm going to read the column. So if we take a look at what happens there, well, my row is going to be 12 and 18, but I'm looking at column 1. So I'm just going to be reading the results of test 2 that Norbert took. Okay, so quite a quick video. I recommend that you go back, watch it over again. All of this is syntactically correct if you want to type it up in Python and take a look at how it works. So what we've just looked at is how two-dimensional arrays work. They are lists within lists. A two-dimensional array is a list within lists, and they're a great way of storing multiple types of data that are related to each other. Okay, you can have three-dimensional array, four-dimensional arrays, but this one just looks at two-dimensional arrays, okay? Thank you so much for listening, and remember to use this diagram when you're thinking about how to break down a problem using computational thinking. Tune in for the next video on stepping through two-dimensional arrays.